Hello, I am Jerry. Ben and I are both very happy to be here. And I'll also mention that the Ben & Jerry's van is still serving free Ben & Jerry's this afternoon. We come before you today as successful business people, a classic American success story. We're two guys who had a good idea and with hard work and determination built a successful business. Well, let's talk about how that came to be. Our parents are first-generation Americans, and they grew up poor. Both our fathers went to night school and lived in a low-income neighborhood in New York City. After World War II, a federally insured, low-interest, low-down payment home mortgage loan enabled our folks to move to the suburbs of Long Island. The equity that our parents got from that government program allowed our families to become lower middle class and then middle class. Ben and I met in middle school, and after high school, we both went to private colleges, which our parents paid for. We both had some legal hiccups along the way. I had to go to court for overloading my parents' car with 14 teenagers. The judge fined me $5. Ben got busted for some pot with some friends and ended up getting a ticket for littering. Ben didn't finish college, and I got rejected from numerous medical schools. We decided to open an ice cream shop, and despite our previous failures, we both managed to come up with $4,000. Even though we didn't have any business or ice cream experience, we were able to write a business plan that was good enough to secure a guaranteed loan from the Small Business Administration. We opened our shop in 1978 in Burlington, Vermont, and after many years, the business has thrived. The entire time that Ben and I were growing up in Merrick, I never felt like we were advantaged by the color of our skin. We were just a couple of guys playing by the rules and trying to make a go of it. We knew that there was a black town next to Merrick, Roosevelt. We never ventured there, and we didn't really know anything about it. We were completely oblivious. Everything we were doing just seemed regular, no different from what anyone else might be experiencing. And I never thought of myself as being a privileged person in a system that oppresses people, or that might even be a system that was intentionally constructed that way. To me, racism consisted of individual acts of discrimination by bad people. Ben and I were both very supportive of the civil rights movement, and Martin Luther King was a hero of ours. We just happened to be a couple of guys who were working hard and got lucky. Well, let's look at our lives from a different perspective.
Let's imagine what it would have been like if Jerry's parents and my parents were African American. It was the 1950s. Our parents really wanted to move out of their apartment in New York City and buy a new home on Long Island with a low down payment, low interest mortgage that the government was subsidizing. The monthly payments were actually less than they were paying in rent. They couldn't believe it. And they'd be building wealth and equity in a new house with a backyard that they would own. It was a no-brainer. But they weren't able to get that subsidized loan because the official written policy of the US government was to make those mortgages available only in all-white suburbs. Our parents even tried to buy a home in an all-white suburb, but they were rejected by the developer because then the development wouldn't be all white. So our parents stayed in the city and paid more money in rent than white people were paying in mortgage payments. They were not able to take care of the subsidized wealth-building plan that the government had put in place. Unlike whites, they were not able to establish a sense of ownership and begin building equity and their nest egg essentially for free. Jerry and I attended marginal, overcrowded, poorly funded schools with inexperienced teachers. They were segregated. Graduation rates were low. We worked hard, overcame the odds, and graduated from high school. Since our parents couldn't borrow money against the equity in a house, they couldn't afford to pay for private college. So we attended a college in the city and continued to live at home. The summer after our first year in college, I got busted for one marijuana cigarette and ended up in jail with a record. Jerry was pulled over for overloading his car and ended up with a huge fine that he couldn't pay. So they just kept on adding more and more interest and fees. After I got out of jail, we wanted to open a little homemade ice cream business together. Jerry had a bit of money saved up, but I didn't. We both got menial jobs to scrape up enough money to start the business. We figured we could get an SBA guaranteed loan for the rest. We prepared a really good business plan, but when we applied for the loan, they asked about my arrest record and rejected it. Then Jerry started getting hounded by collection agencies for his overloading ticket. We had some great ideas for ice cream flavors and what our shop would be like, but we just couldn't save the money we needed. We took whatever jobs we could. Jerry did better because he didn't have a record, but I could never get a decent job. Eventually, we each fell in love and got married and had kids, but we never could get that head start that we needed. So no, if Jerry and I had been black, there never would have been a Ben & Jerry's. The deck was just too stacked against us. The prevailing myth is that the government wasn't responsible for racial wealth disparities, so there's no governmental responsibility for undoing it. But we know now that the shape of our world then, when we were kids, and the shape of our world now wasn't just an accident. We know that these disparities in wealth and segregated communities are a result of deliberate government policy. We know that. It's not debatable. It's a fact, and it's demonstrable. The point is not that there would never have been Cherry Garcia or Chunky Monkey ice cream. The point is that there are millions of black and brown people that have been screwed by a system of white privilege. And it's only when white people take responsibility and each of us actively works to end structural racism that we will finally have justice and America will be the dream, the dreamer's dream.